Give me a minute. Now, this happened 4 days ago. So you've probably seen something about it. This ship right here is the Olya 4. It's out of Port Olya on the Caspian Sea. It's a Russian merchant vessel. It goes back and forth to Iran. According to the Ukrainians, it was loaded with drones and drone parts, the deadly Shaheds that come into Kyiv every night, right? That just unalived a Ukrainian family yesterday, an entire family. So it's a perfectly legitimate military target. The problem is it's on the Caspian Sea. Now, this happened 4 days ago, and you might be thinking to yourself, Petey, why are you just doing this now? Why didn't you do it 3 days ago? Because I didn't understand it, and I still don't. What do I mean by that? Well, look, we've talked about the trade in drones and gold, right? The Russians pay the Iranians in gold. Between Iran and Russia, since basically not the start of the war, but say 8 months into the war, right? The trade began, where Russia saw how Ukraine was using drones, and they didn't have any, so they went to the Iranians and bought them, right? So for 2.5 years now, the drones have been going back and forth, and people will often ask, Peter, why don't the Ukrainians hit the boats, interdict the trade? And I've always had to say, because they can't. It's too far away, right? Port Olya is about 1,600 kilometers, over 1,000 miles from Ukraine. They don't have anything big enough to take out a ship like this. Those kamikaze drones that they use, I hate that word, kamikaze, sorry. One-way drones that they use. We haven't seen anything that could do this. So how did they do it? And why aren't they saying? I can tell you what drones hit 1,000 miles away in Tatarstan. I can tell you what drone was flying over Moscow that led to the cancellation of the Navy Day parade. We don't know what drones these were. I don't know that we even know that they were aerial drones. Now, there is fire damage up in the command tower, right, where you pilot the ship from. So it looks like there was fire there. Maybe that was a drone hit from an aerial UAV. But to get it to sink like that, you got to hit it close to the water line. Now, you could do that, I guess, with a drone, right? But there's no such thing as a first-person view drone that operates 1,000 miles away. You have to program it to hit at the waterline. And there's ways to do that, right, with AI targeting recognition. However, the fact that Ukraine isn't saying how this operation was accomplished tells us something. See, I was waiting for more information, and no information has come. And that's very unusual for the Ukrainians. There's almost always spotter drone video of these hits, or the actual camera from the drone before it impacts, and we get that video, usually 48, 72 hours later. It's 96 hours later. Nobody in Kyiv is saying a word about this hit. Now, why then does that interest me? Because there's another explanation too. Because the first explanation for this happening would be that the Ukrainians have developed some new long-range drone with a heavy payload, and they used it to take out this ship. And entirely possible, perfectly legitimate. But there is another explanation. Here's the country of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is right on the Caspian Sea, and the Port Olya is just north of that international line that separates Azerbaijan from Russia. Now, Azerbaijan and Armenia are traditional enemies. For 300 years, they fought over that land right there and this land here. You can see Azerbaijan is split by Armenia. Armenia's got control of this corridor, and there's this Azeri exclave over here. 300 years, these guys have been fighting over this. Armenia was a member of Russia's Dollar Tree NATO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization. And when Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh 2 years ago, the Armenians turned to the Russians and got no help, despite their CSTO status. And they lost Nagorno-Karabakh. Since then, the Armenians seem to have accepted the situation and have moved into a diplomatic footing with the Azeris and signed a notable peace deal in the presence of Donald Trump. Now, look, I don't think he had anything to do with it. I want to be very clear about that. These guys have been getting their shit together because I think they both understand they have a much bigger enemy. That shared enemy is the Russian Federation that has been breathing down their necks, extracting value from their societies and giving nothing back for so long that I think they're ready to work together against their interests. And as the highlight of that is before this deal was ever even signed, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, and Kazakhstan agreed to transport Kazakh's oil through the Trans-Balkan pipeline to Europe. Now, Europe is supposed to be Putin's pipeline customer. Europe is supposed to be off limits. Kazakhstan is supposed to be transporting all of its oil through Russian pipelines, through the Caspian Consortium pipeline. But now it's all flowing through to the Azeris, which is costing the Russians a lot of money that they're not making in transport costs, right? And the Azeris are pissed with the Russians. Now, the Armenians are pissed because Russia let them down on Nagorno-Karabakh. The Azeris are pissed because in the last couple years, the Russians have murdered a bunch of Azeris in police custody inside Russia. They have shot down civilian airliners of the Azeris. They have done spy operations against them using Sputnik Azerbaijan, a Russian state-owned media outlet in Azerbaijan. And the list goes on, increasingly disenchanted. Now, the Azeris have never been sponsors of Ukraine except for humanitarian aid. That may be changing. Here's why. The Russians keep targeting Azeri infrastructure inside Ukraine. This is the Sokar oil depot in Odessa, which just last night, 3 days after the sinking of that ship in the Caspian Sea, was targeted and completely destroyed. Now, why would the Russians send 15 drones to target the Sokar, the Azerbaijani-owned Sokar oil depot in Odessa? Unless maybe they were, especially after being warned by Aliyev out of Baku, not to do it anymore, not to target Azeri infrastructure inside Ukraine. Why would they go out of their way to destroy that oil depot 3 days after a ship was sunk on the Caspian Sea for the first time in this conflict? Now, I don't know, but is it possible that the Ukrainians can now launch drones from Azerbaijan's soil? Could Aliyev be that pissed that he's not sending weapons, he's not doing anything overt, but could he be letting the Ukrainians operate on the Caspian shores? I don't think it's impossible. And some analysts have speculated that that might be the case, but we don't have any consensus. It could just be that the Ukrainians are keeping secret a new drone. But I wonder, when we think about the dominoes to watch, Azerbaijan is one of them. And the destruction of this facility last night seems a little personal to me.